Welcome to the Liar's Bench radio podcast. I'm your host, William Ritter. In part 2 of our Christmas special, Gary Carden describes a few very old Appalachian holiday traditions. It's really a shame no one goes serenading anymore, and no, I'm not talking about going around singing carols. That, first footers, and more on today's episode of the Liar's Bench. When I visited Gary's house to record this episode, he motioned me towards a giant drawing pad hanging above his stairs. They featured page after page of Christmas traditions and some of his accompanying artwork. There are many odd and wonderful winter solstice practices around the world, but for today we'll focus on a few that survived on into the Appalachian tradition. Here's Gary on first footers and talking animals.
Well, first footers, that's like FIRST-FOOTERS. The tradition of first footers is the tradition or the old superstition that the first person to step across the threshold of your house on Christmas morning, now there are some people that only did it on New Year's, so it was the first day of the new year, but regardless, it was what kind of year you were going to have. Were you going to have good crops? Were everything going to sell well? Were you and your wife going to get along? Were you not going to get rheumatism? Were you healthy? Or were you going to be sickly? Or were you going to have a lot of bad luck? Were you going to lose the farm? They said all that was perfectly evident by the first footer. If the first person that steps across your threshold, let's say Christmas morning, if he is red-headed, you're going to have a bad year. If he's blonde and red-headed, oh God, I feel sorry for you. You're going to have sickness and misery and so on. But now if the first person that stepped across was brunette, black hair, why, everything was fine. Now the theory is that all dates back to some famous battle. And in that battle, it was the redheads against the brunettes. That could have very easily been some Scottish people fighting a war against the Irish people. But regardless, we associated it with the color of their hair. Now, being careful people, cautious, a lot of mountain people believed in it, but they weren't above going out the night before the New Year's or Christmas and going to a neighbor's house who happened to be brunette and say, why don't you come to breakfast in the morning about 5 o'clock? That way they could be sure that they got a brunette and the whole year would be wonderful. And if a redhead showed up and he was a good friend, you would still have to say, I'm sorry, Roy, could you come back this afternoon? Don't let that man in your house. If he steps across the threshold, you're doomed. Then, of course, there were the talking animals. You put all the stock up in the barn, you got a cow out there, got a mule out there, and you got a talkative pig out there. They're all out there in the barn, you know, the calves and everything, and it's Christmas Eve. And at midnight, they talk. They talk to each other. The cow says to the mule, well, it's been a good year. How about you? Well, it's not been bad, says the mule. Fed me pretty well, but I tell you, I've been thinking about running away. Well, they believed so passionately that they were talking. There were some people that got so curious, they hid in the barn to see if the cow and the mule and the donkey and the pig talked. And when they started talking, they thought, my God, it's true. And they're down there talking up a storm. They're talking about this and that and what the kids are doing. And my wife had a litter this year, you know. Yeah. And they're talking up a storm. And then one of them says, you know, the guy that owns us here, he's a nice fella. I think it's a shame he's going to die this year. Yeah, it is a shame, isn't it? Why is he going to die? Well, the damn fool came in here and heard us speak. That's why. He's back there right now. There he goes!
Okay, this next part is one of my very favorite Christmas traditions, and it is weird as the wind. Without further ado, one of the last serenades in Macon County.
Well, the time I arrived over in Great Granny's, and of course I was a little feller and ignorant, and I thought serenading meant making music, you know. And when Aunt Irene and Fred and Ardale and the relatives started talking about we might go serenading tonight, I thought we were going to go out and sing like a quartet someplace. But no, I'm here to tell you, it ain't got anything to do with singing. When it got time for us to go, we all went back in Great Granny's house. We sat around that fireplace and we took soot out of the fireplace and put it on our face. I don't know why. When I said, why are we doing that? And they says, well, don't ask questions, Gary, just do it. This is what you do when you serenade. This is what your granddaddy and your great-granddaddy and probably your great-great-granddaddy did. He sat here just like you are now, and he put soot on his face. Now, you got to wear one of Irene's dresses, because the boys all wear dresses, and the girls all wear overalls. And get us a dishpan. We need a dishpan that makes a lot of noise. Get a hammer. There's a hammer out there on the porch. And the shotgun. Let's take the shotgun and at least 4 shells. Okay? All right. And we got that old pistol, but we just got 2 bullets. Well, that's okay. We'll use both of them. And that'll make enough noise. Outside of that, you'll just have to scream. Okay? Let's go. And so the next thing I knew, we were in the dark, prowling up a side road, and we went for the longest time through laurel thickets. And the next thing I knew, we were coming up on a house, and I could see a lamp in the window. And shh, be quiet now. We crawled up around the bottom of that house. And he says, let's see if we can get under it. It's best if we can get under the house. And so we got under the house, crawled up under it. And he says, okay, go. And one of us beat that frying pan. I think it was Fred that had that wash pan. Bam, 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 bam. And we all hollered, whoa, 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 boom, boom, boom. Oh, and we had a cowbell. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. Boom, boom. They said, that ought to do it. And sure enough, it did. They come out on the porch and says, who the hell is that? And Ardale says, it's just us. It's the Hearsts and the Cardens and the Shepherds from down the hill. And he says, well, we thought it might be y'all. Well, y'all come on in. We'll give you some sassafras tea and a piece of cake. Well, what I found out is that was one of the last serenades that took place in Macon County, because it was an old tradition and people had been doing that forever and they didn't know why. It was just something they always did at Christmas. And then after that, they went up on the hill and built a big fire. And there'd be fires all over Macon County. You could see them on other mountaintops. And they said they did that because that's what they did in the old country. In England and in Ireland, they built them fires on the top of the mountain. And there was even some people that said it dated all the way back to prehistoric times when there was just clans and frightened people who were scared to death because it was the dead of winter and it seemed to be snowing real hard and it was just getting worse all the time. And they believed that maybe the sun would stop, that it would freeze in the heavens. But if they made a lot of noise, if they built a lot of fires, if they serenaded, if they screamed and beat on things, the wheel would turn and go on, and we'd be blessed with another year.
I love that story. Gary tells me that eventually a sheriff circulated a notice throughout the mountains in Georgia and North Carolina insisting that the practice of serenading be hung up for good on account of somebody almost getting killed. And just like that, an ancient tradition was gone, Oh, and just to be clear, the house that was going to be serenaded tended to know or expect what was coming. Gary has told me before how, when they were invited inside, coffee and tea and some food were fixed and ready, despite the fact that everyone appeared to be asleep. So, if you're going to try to revive this ancient practice, do try not to get shot or scare someone out of their mind. Thanks for listening today. We'll leave you with a Christmas song you've probably not heard before, but before we get to that, just a quick note. Our live shows were always free, but we do think that it is very important that artists receive something for their work, so if you are interested in sponsoring future shows or making a donation, please reach out to us via the Contact Us link on our website, liarsbenchpodcast.podbean.com. Every once in a while for our Liars Bench shows, Gary would ask me to write a song or sing an old song. I didn't write this song for the Liars Bench, but I thought I'd share it. This is me and my beautiful wife, Sarah Ogletree, singing a song that I wrote called Rejoice, for the King has Come. Bethlehem, oh Bethlehem, he was born in a town called Bethlehem. He was born on Christmas Day. Should the skies have mourned for the babe newborn, who would die for us one day? Did the shepherds yet know the awful death for which the sun would pay? Rejoice, for the King has come. Make a joyful sound as you gather round and rejoice, for the King has come. Rejoice, for the King has come. Did the stars above stir and move with love as a child in a manger slept? Would the trees bend down for his starry crown, and with falling leaves have wept? Rejoice, for the King has come. Make a joyful sound as you gather round and rejoice, for the King has come. Rejoice, for the King has come. On this winter night, 'neath the joyful lights, mid songs of hope and love, send a simple prayer through the chilly air, and give thanks for the birth of a baby boy. Give thanks for the babe born that day. Rejoice, for the King has come. Make a joyful sound as you gather round and rejoice, for the King has come. Rejoice, for the King has come. Bethlehem, oh Bethlehem, he was born in a town called Bethlehem. He was born on Christmas Christmas!